Hi, my name is Shar, and I am here to talk to you today about our friend Flower. Flower is our 6-year-old skunk. She's turning 7 in May, and she and her sister Stella were actually found here at the zoo in 2013. They were rehabbed by our vet team. They were found without a mom, and they have been at the zoo, and they've been practicing their walking skills. So Flower is here to show it off. And one of the neat things about being able to do a rehabbing program at the zoo is that we're able to help our local wildlife.
So Shar, can you tell us a little bit more, some people are still sort of trickling into the live stream, about where Flower was found and what it means to rehab an animal at the zoo?
Flower was found in our bison area, in the back area where the bison hang out at night and have their nighttime snoozes. And rehabbing is if an animal is deemed unreleasable by a vet, then the zoo will do what it can to provide them with a long-term home. So then they become ambassadors for their species.
We have a great question here. Somebody's asking, what should you do if you see a skunk in the wild?
You should leave the skunk alone if you come across one. Generally speaking, they're more afraid of you than you are of them. And usually they're just kind of looking for food, seeing what's going on around them, and they don't generally travel too far from home. So just back away and admire them from far.
A couple of questions here about how old Flower is, and he talked about, we have one other skunk here as well, if you want to just kind of talk about her a little bit as well.
So Flower will actually be turning 7 at the end of May, and her sister is the same age. Stella was found at the exact same time. They're part of the same litter. But Stella is a lot more shy than Flower is. So Stella is working on being more confident and coming out and meeting people. But Flower, as you can see, loves it, loves getting outside, cruising around, exploring. She's all about it.
There's some questions about what skunks eat and what you are feeding to her right now.
I am actually feeding her a cat chow along with some green peppers. Skunks are omnivores, so they will actually eat pretty much everything, and that includes insects and mice. So they're really good around to have your house. We don't always want them around our house, but they do provide that bit of relief from pests.
We have some questions here about what part of the zoo does Flower live in. She isn't currently available to see for the public, so can you talk a little bit about why that is and where she's living?
So Flower is living in what we call the boreal section, so that is everything from pelicans to bison to cougars to wolves. We do have a indoor holding area where there is a little back area where we can walk them around and give them some outside time. They are not on display at this time because they require quite the significant dig barrier. They're very good diggers, and they do spend the majority of the day sleeping. They wake up at dusk and then they go to bed at dawn. So we try to bring them out when they're awake and wanting to be out and seeing people. So yeah.
Some questions here about, have you ever been sprayed? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I have never been sprayed by Flower or Stella. They've had their scent glands removed when they were young, when they had their spay. I have, however, been sprayed walking my dog. Accidentally ran into a skunk.
So can you tell us a bit about how she's walking right now and how you've been working with her to train her to do this?
So basically, when it came to training her, she's very friendly and she kind of wants to be around you all the time. So it was pretty easy to train her to kind of follow your feet. Skunks don't have very good eyesight. They can't see much more than about a foot in front of them. So when we were training this, we were essentially just rewarding her for following us around her little exhibit area. And then it eventually turned into getting her, too much food, getting her used to having a halter on, getting handled, and then just reinforcing her for following us, and then that's when the leash came in.
Some questions about, do all skunks have the black and white stripes, and are they born with those stripes?
Skunks are born with those stripes. Now there are other species of skunks that have a different pattern, like there is a spotted skunk, but here in North America we find the striped skunk and subspecies of that. So yeah, they're born with it, and they all have the big stripes going down their backs. They all have some on their nose. They will have different variations of that, but that is generally what they have.
We had a question about, do they grow a winter coat? So you were telling me a little bit before about how it might be a little cold for them in the winter here. So can you talk about what they do in the winter, both here at the zoo and in the wild?
At the zoo, we have them awake all winter. We provide them with a nice warm winter housing, so they are awake and they're active. But if they were in the wild, they would be going into what we call a torpor. So it's similar to hibernation. Their body rate will, everything kind of slows down, and then they will go into a nice long sleep. Now, the difference between a torpor and a hibernation is that they will wake up on nice days to feed. Skunks in particular will wake up in early spring, like April, May, and that's actually when they start breeding. So then they'll be cruising around, there's still snow, hanging out, meeting up with each other, and then they go back to bed until it's nice and warm. So they do have that ability, but they don't necessarily grow a thick winter coat like, say, a coyote would or a wolf would. They actually gain more fat reserves, and then when they're sleeping, that's actually what they live off of. So they'll wake up nice and trim.
So a couple more questions about how they spray, how far they can spray, how often they can spray, if she had her scent glands.
So if Flower had her scent glands, she would be able to spray up to 10 feet, and in general they can spray up to around 6 times back to back, and then it can take them anywhere from 5 to 10 days to actually rebuild that gland and scent. So they generally don't want to just spray. Oh, hello. Hello. Come on, let's play. Come on. Flower, over here. So
I just had a question asking if you ever pick up the skunks, and I saw you carrying her out with a little blanket. Can you talk a little bit about the bond that you have with Flower?
So being that she was raised at the zoo, quite a few of us have known her since she was a wee little baby that fit in our hands when they needed to find a home. So there are those of us at the zoo who have worked with her most of her life, and we have a pretty good bond. Now, that being said, we can carry her around, but we are always making sure that our hands are never in front of her face. Skunks don't have the greatest eyesight, and we find that they do get a little nippy, and they do go through seasonal changes just like any other wild animal. They also startle rather easily. So when we're carrying them, it's all by choice. Basically, you would kneel down, and if she crawls up onto you and gets into position in your elbow, then you can walk around with her. But if she chooses not to, then that's just what's going to happen. She just doesn't want to be picked up, and that's okay. It's all about choice and control for the animals.
She is so cute, and we have a question here asking, would a skunk make a good pet?
Oh, I love that question. So they're very cute, and they're very tempting to have as a pet, but I would not recommend them. They have this terrible, terrible odor, even if they have that glands removed. It smells very foxy, and it can carry. Like, your entire house will be filled with it. On top of that, they're also extremely destructive. So they want to dig everything. So say goodbye to those wonderful gardens we all work so hard on. They'll probably dig up some of your flooring. That's just what they're naturally born to do, is dig up those pests in our backyards. And then another thing is that being that they can't see very well, we don't want to get nipped. They're not an animal that is bred to be a companion. So they can get quite nippy, and that's not necessarily always good for a family dynamic.
We have another question here. Someone mentioned that she heard that skunks are very smart, and is asking, are they easy to train?
They are so smart. I think that they are so incredibly smart, and I think that they kind of don't really get as much credit as they deserve. So our skunks here are actually trained to walk in to a little a little tube, and then it's got little openings on the sides, and we can actually give them their yearly vaccines that way. That keeps everybody safe and lets the skunk kind of know that like it's okay, it's training time, this is like totally safe, and they can leave if they want. They also do a target, they do a station, they go on the scale, they walk on a halter, they go into the crate, so they're crate trained just like our dogs at home. They do lots of fun stuff. I don't think people give them enough credit.
We have a question from Edith, wondering what they would eat in the wild.
In the wild, they would eat a lot of roots. So, you know, think like they would be like grubby type roots, like potatoes and like things like that, similar in the wild. They would eat a lot of insects, a lot of small rodents, frogs, that kind of thing. And then like any droppings from like trees, like apples. Are you done? Are you all done? Yeah, sorry. They would eat like apples and things that have fallen off the trees, and then any like leftovers, like, oh dear. Okay, are you all done your walk? Excuse me 1 second, folks. Okay, come down. Look, over here. There we go. So then they would also scavenge for leftovers. So say if, you know, a fox had caught something and there were a little bit of leftovers, they would eat that.
We had a question here as well about why they wouldn't be released when we rehab. So can you talk a bit about that process? And you had mentioned to me earlier that we have some other animals here in the zoo that are also rehabs. Can you talk about that a little bit?
When it comes to rehabbing, depending on the animal's age, it can be really hard to rehab them. So if you have to do any hand rearing, which in the case of the skunks, we did have to bottle feed. Our vet team did an amazing job doing that. It's a lot of work, but the animals get very friendly with people. So when you go to release them, that can pose quite a problem. And then sometimes it's a matter of injury. We have pelicans who have long-term injuries. They'll never be able to see out of one eye, or they won't be able to fly, which can make finding food and survival in the wild extremely difficult. So in those cases, you can't really release them. Tika, our female cougar, is also a rehab. Again, found very, very young, got very used to people, kind of not an animal that you want running around and saying hello to everyone. So, you know, the skunks are in the same boat. They're very friendly, and as we all know, we don't necessarily want a skunk running up to us when we're out on a stroll. Oh, flower. What's that?
We have a few questions about what she weighs and what a skunk's lifespan is.
In the wild, a skunk would be lucky to live till 3. In captivity, upwards of 10 years old is very, very common. And she weighs actually around 2.5 kg. So that's about average for what a female skunk would weigh. Males can weigh, you know, around 3, a little bit bigger. And then obviously depending, like, you know, all genetics are different. You're going to get variations within that range. Whoop, here we go.
So we've got some great questions, and I think we're about to wrap up, but can you tell me what is your favorite thing about Flower and skunks in general?
My favorite thing about Flower would be her willingness to explore and be put in new situations, and she's just not afraid of pretty much anything. So.
Okay, I lied. I have one more great question
Okay.
that I just saw. Asking, do the skunks play together, and do they play at all? And what's their favorite thing to play with?
The skunks don't necessarily do what we would call playing. They engage with enrichment if it comes in the form of a puzzle feeder and has a food reward. But in general, when we've offered them things like cat toys and stuff, they don't necessarily seek to play with it out of enjoyment. They prefer to spend their time eating or sleeping. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We have another one for you with Bianca and the Maras on Wednesday at 1. Thank you for listening to me and meeting Flower. Take care.